My name is Alexa, and I am the founder of Care Identity and the Kli'nishen's Atelier. So I wanted to create this podcast more than anything to be an educational platform. I have been working as a brander and designer for nearly 20 years, designer for 20 years. I started the branding agency about 15 years ago in 2009, and I've been working in sales also about 20 years. And I wanted to bring all my expertise together, and also the about 8 years I've been working in specifically direct primary care, direct care, specialty care, and concierge care space for the last 8 years, and how I've worked with independent practices, private practices in that space, how I've worked branding them, tactics on marketing. And so this particular podcast, which is the Kli'nishen's Atelier, that is the website where I have tools, resources, and also courses and templates and everything for somebody that may be a more of a do-it-yourself type spirit. And Care Identity is where I actually work one-on-one with clients to build their brand. And so I really wanted to create a resource. I often put a lot of content out there. I'm in the process of creating this platform to really educate and to help those that are starting their practice. And though I may not be a physician or clinician myself, I know what it is to start a business. I started my business in 2009. I was 21 years old. And back then, there was no such things as coaches. There wasn't the resources that there were today. And I wish, honestly, that there were a lot of things I now know that I would have known back then, and things I had to learn the hard way along the way, little by little, trying to figure it out. And so if I can give any information that would help you on your journey to just being an entrepreneur, and I think the information that I want to share isn't just about the business type of that you're starting, which is most likely healthcare if you found this podcast. But I want to come from a branding and marketing and sales perspective. And often when I work with clients, people think they're hiring me just for a website. And something that I don't often speak about, that it was just part of the service that I offered, was the coaching and the educational and mentorship aspect that I just did with my clients, trying to set them up for success. My goal with this podcast is to bring in hopefully past clients and even just other clinicians that have started their own practice, that are independent clinicians, and just asking them and interviewing them on their process for branding, specifically how they marketed themselves, how have they been able to grow, whether it's a big city, a rural town. My goal here is not just to share my personal expertise, but also wanting to share with others the experience of people that are already doing it. And so I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, people have started practices and that are opened, but really the focus of this particular podcast is specifically marketing in mind. Like, what did you do? How did you do it? Did you invest in ads? Did you invest in SEO? What was that process like? Where did your leads come from? And I really want us to pay attention. Is there a theme? What are some things we can keep in mind when you're starting your journey? I want really, for those that have wanted to go into the direct pay, concierge, cash pay space, those that are breaking away from insurance model, that's typically what I've worked with. And honestly, I come from the perspective of a patient that has looked for those services. I have been a DPC patient, and I have actually paid for services that have either been cash pay or apps that have offered counseling for talk therapy that are also cash pay or membership paid models. And so I personally have sought out these type of services. And so I personally want to focus on this group of independent clinicians that are really making healthcare affordable and accessible for people like myself. And so I think what's really beautiful about the synergy is, though a lot of people out there are coming from the focus and the vision and the expertise of being one of those physicians or doctors or clinicians that started, or therapists that started the practice, I actually come from the perspective of someone that has bought into those services. And also, how do those audience, or how does the messaging speak to somebody like myself? And I think that's what's made a really great synergy between me and my clients. And so I really am excited about the interviews and everything that is coming up with the Kli'nishen's Atelier. I have loved branding and creating brands with Care Identity, and that is still my build your brand with Care Identity. I will continue working one-on-one with those that want to invest in a personal brand. But this platform, like I said in the beginning, the Kli'nishen's Atelier is an educational platform, a tools platform. It will have templates that you can buy. You will have guides that you can purchase. You can also have free resources. This will be one of those free resources of just information that will help you be successful. This brand was literally born out of just interviewing with multiple physicians and clinicians that had a do-it-yourself spirit, that maybe were not ready or did not want to invest in a custom brand, but really wanted to create their own brand. And so I saw a need and I thought, let me go ahead and create templates for websites that know the messaging that this audience needs for creating their brand. I want to create guides that will also be available to help you be successful, courses on how to literally create your website from scratch if you like. This is going to be like a hub. And so that's why I named it the Kli'nishen's Atelier. Atelier means workshop or design shop. And obviously clinician, which can be a physician, doctor, therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, a nurse, whatever pretty much falls in that umbrella. This will be a hub for you to come and really want to empower you. I am very passionate about building businesses. I was 21 years old when I woke up one day, and I had just graduated during the recession in 2009. No idea what I was doing, to be honest with you. I came from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad ran a business. I was working for a company at the time, and all I could think of was, I went to school for interior design. I don't want to lose my skills. I need to do something. And so I created an opportunity where there were no opportunities at the time. They were firing designers, not hiring designers. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a business. I'm going to freelance until I can get hired, is my thought. And never did I think in a million years that when I created my own brand, that people would begin to hire me to make their brand. And that's how I transitioned from interior design to graphic and web designer. That's how my business began to be a branding agency in 2009. And then in 2016, my cousin, who is a doctor, was launching a direct primary care practice, and she asked me to go ahead and brand her business. She knew that I branded companies, startups, and this was one of the first times I was actually working with a doctor, but I ended up working with her, and I really loved what DPC stood for, and myself not having insurance, being self-employed, and just the cost of insurance as someone that's self-employed made healthcare seem just unattainable. I felt very passionate as well of the movement of direct pay and these membership models, and I really loved what DPC was doing. And so my way of contributing to the movement was helping these practices get established. As I have expanded further and the years have passed, I continue to think of ways to develop and create a place for people to just find the education and the resources and the tools that they need to be able to be successful. Because that wasn't something I really had when I was younger. And I know there's so many tools, there's so many things out there, which is wonderful. And so my hope is to bring a perspective directly from someone that does branding for a living. So I want to go ahead and segue into what is branding exactly, right? We think branding is just a pretty cute logo or a design, but just simply put, branding is not just the logo or your icon or how people recognize you. Branding is the overall aesthetics of just how everything translates from the first logo that they see through the messaging on your website, the way you speak to people through your site, all the way to how people feel when they walk through the doors of your practice, or if you're virtual, that first meeting, right? So sometimes people also call it, like, let's say your practice, your branded interior, right? So let's say your logo is kind of a green and cream vibe, kind of like a nature type feel, right? When people walk into your office, it should feel the same. It should translate the same. What happens is sometimes people will have one logo style here in a palette, and then they'll have a message here that's generic that doesn't really speak to their audience. And then when they come into the office, it's like a completely different aesthetics, like navy blue and nothing to do with their brand. And so there's no cohesiveness. And so subconsciously what happens is when people look at your brand and it's not cohesive, there's kind of a lack of stability. They may not even realize this subconsciously. But when you take the time to invest in every detail, just like you invest the time in every detail of your patient's health, you should invest in every detail of your brand. And you may think that doesn't really matter, but you want to go back to the psychology. You want to go back to, how do people think? Because subconsciously you're sending messages to people. And so if your messaging's all over the place, or you're wondering why you're not capturing your ideal patient panel, you need to kind of go back and think, well, who am I speaking to? I just spoke with a doctor the other day, and she said to me, I really want to work with women are going through menopause, maybe in their early 50s. And I went to her website and I was reading her content. Now, the website's beautiful. She did good on that part of the branding. The logo looks great. Her coloring looks great. The palette's there. And I was reading the text on her site and I was like, number one, there's no imagery here on the site that tells me you work with this group of women. So one way to kind of subconsciously speak to people is through imagery. Number two is when I read the text, it only spoke about direct primary care. It did not speak to me or to the potential audience about, are you premenopausal? Are you going through menopause? Are you suffering from hot flashes? Any key terms that would capture my attention as a woman that might be like, oh my gosh, I'm going through this. This is speaking to me. And so sometimes we think by just throwing some generic text on a site, and I get it. Sometimes we just need to get something launched and we just want to hurry up and we just want to put information on a site and we're in a rush. And I understand. But sometimes if you just step back for just a moment and you really take time to think of your messaging, of how you're going to speak to that person and how you're going to encourage that person to take action, you need to put yourself in their shoes, right? Sometimes I was actually speaking to a client of mine yesterday and they added some text to the copywriting that we wrote, which is not an issue at all. But there was a term in the copy that I didn't even understand. And it was very much a medical type term. And I just asked them, would an everyday person know this? And the reason I asked that is because I don't know if there's certain terms that people may search for, right? Just because I don't know it doesn't mean that somebody else may not be searching this key term. So I asked her, I was like, is this a term somebody's going to search for? And she's like, well, no, just sometimes I think at a higher level. And I understand, and that's one of the reasons why I offer copywriting to clients, because I used to just let clients provide me copy. But the truth is, honestly, when you're creating copy, you need to think of creating copy for someone that's like in 8th grade or like junior high or high school. Someone an everyday person can read it and understand, using terms that are just very easy to understand. Because if someone can't read that message or read your text and automatically understand what it is you're saying right away, then you're probably not going to get a conversion, or there's going to lead confusion. And there's actually a really great book that one of my other physician friends had recommended to me that's called The Truth in Pricing. And that book really made a statement that made a lot of sense. It says, if the way you're wording things, your way you're messaging is, if it's confusing, then people aren't going to move forward. Anytime someone's confused or does not understand what it is that you're selling, they're not going to move forward. And so you may think branding's like, oh, what a cute logo. No, branding is so much more than that. Branding is a package. Branding is the way it looks. Branding is the way you speak. Think of branding as yourself. Think of branding as how you look, right? Your logo is how you look. Then think of your patient experience once they've met you, how you treated them. What was their experience like? Once they've actually had that one-on-one interaction, how is that going to resonate with them? And lastly, your values is pretty much your practices, beliefs, and principles. And so when you put that all together, that is your brand. That is your package. And so sometimes you have to look beyond just the logo. And so you need to think of like, first off, who am I talking to? And I know this is not the first time you've heard this, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times. Who is your target audience? And sometimes people are afraid if they niche too much, they're going to lose out on opportunity. They have this fear of missing out on the opportunity of getting other clients. I will tell you this, and I am literally living proof. I have been branding, like I said earlier, since 2009, okay? 15 years I've been creating brands. And I started by literally branding any business startup, beauty industry like lashes, salons, fitness, healthcare, attorneys, fashion, photographers, self-storage, real estate, in the food industry. I literally, when I started branding, I worked with anyone that was willing to work with me. And people would ask me, have you worked with an attorney before? Have you worked in the food industry before? I literally would tell them, you tell me what you want, I can do it. One thing I learned in design school is you design for the client. And if you follow me, you've heard me say this before. And if you've seen my work, you can see that every client I design for, their site is different, because I do design for the client. Now, as much as I pride myself that I could literally design anything, and I still can till this day, people really didn't like that, unfortunately. People really wanted someone that specialized in one thing. And, it's like going to a family physician, but you need to go to a heart surgeon. Like, those are two different types of specialties. Like, you're just not going to go to the family doctor when you need heart surgery. And it doesn't mean one has more value than the other. It's just the reality is you want someone that specializes in what they specialize in. And so I realized that though I worked in what I thought was a niche called startups, right? I'm like, I work with startups. It wasn't enough. And there was always kind of like this lack of trust. Like, people were still unsure if they wanted to hire me at times. And sometimes I lost opportunity because they just didn't trust that I had the expertise, even though I knew I could do it. And so it wasn't until really 2021, believe it or not. So in 2016, I started working in the healthcare DPC, direct pay concierge model in 2016. It wasn't until 5 years later that I finally decided to sub-brand into Care Identity. So my parent company of all of the brands that you will see that I have, because I have multiple, and we'll get into that, my parent company is called Strands of Silver. So I naturally have gray hair. If you know me, my hair is naturally gray. I started premature graying at 10 years old, and by 16, I had a stripe in my hair. So people have known me for my gray hair pretty much my whole life. My dad used to love to call me Cruella de Vil or Pepe Le Pew. He thought it was hilarious. So anyways, I have gray hair. So I always felt like branding is who you are, right? So I named my parent company Strands of Silver Company. And so for years, I didn't really care. I kept it as Strands of Silver. I rebranded actually a couple of times, but I named it Strands of Silver. And then in 2021, I kept interviewing this direct primary care, direct pay physicians. And I realized they kept asking me like, but how much experience do you really have? But like, how many websites have you really designed? Like I realized like one thing in sales that you'll learn, and the more you work with people and maybe you already have the skill, you can read between the lines. Like, with people's tones and inflections, and maybe I'll do a class on this one day, but with people's tones and inflections, you can definitely pick up on when they don't really trust you, right? It's the way they say it. And I was realizing, okay, I have enough projects now to create a sub-brand. I have enough projects to create a whole separate website to showcase all the DPC, all the direct pay websites I've designed. So that's where Care Identity was born. So Care Identity was born out of the fact that I needed to showcase that, yes, I have worked with doctors. Yes, I do know this industry well. I understand what it is that you need. Literally, the next year, my business, I believe, almost 4 times. I made 4 times more money when I niched. Right? Here I am all these years doing startups, thinking that's a niche, making decent money, making average salary, nothing crazy. I mean, I still worked a full-time job for years because it just wasn't enough. And finally, I take the leap of faith and decide to make a niche. And it goes back to messaging, and this goes back to branding. So this is the point of the story, the messaging and the branding. So I create what? A niche into Care Identity, which is working with direct pay, concierge model, membership style business, private practices. And then my business literally 4 times more clients. And then from there, I can now showcase what I've done. And now people sometimes would hire me and say, I'm hiring you. I like your work, but what really made me want to hire you is because you know the model, because you know direct primary care, because you know what it is I'm doing and I don't have to explain it to somebody else. And there were times where I have lost the opportunity and people have chosen to work with other designers. And later they will come to me and tell me, I wish I would have hired you. The person that I hired did not know what DPC was. They didn't know what the model was. They didn't understand membership model. It was a nightmare. And so I realized that when you get your messaging right and you can show people, hey, I'm an expert in this. I understand. I will save you time. I will save you money. I know exactly what you need. I can help you. That made the world of difference. And so, one, you need to niche. You need to find out, who do I want to work with? Now, that doesn't mean I still don't get I do still get side projects. I'm going to call them side projects. I still get, a construction company every now and then that might hire me, or an attorney that might hire me. And anytime I get those side clients, I run them under Strands of Silver, which is what I call my all-inclusive branding agency, my startup agency. I still use Strands of Silver for those clients. But anything that's healthcare related, anything that's direct pay, cash pay model, I use Care Identity. And so that's where I saw such a big difference and such growth. And to be honest, I still don't get a lot of those clients like that are outside of healthcare. Like, I realized when I niched, because what happens when you niche is people refer you to other people, right? If you have, let's go back to the example of the lady with menopause that wanted to work, with the menopause patients. If that physician or that clinician had worked with the lady that was going through menopause, and she would have had a great experience, right? What is she going to do? She's going to go tell all her other friends in the same age bracket, and she's going to be like, you have to go to her. You have to go to this doctor. You have to go to this practice, right? They're going to recommend you, right? And so the more they recommend you, the more your practice is going to grow. But if you're trying to help every single type of person, like I did, every single type of startups, and there is no niche, then you're not going to get lots of referrals. Yes, those people referred me sometimes to different types of industries, but it was far and few between. But if you were to become this is a great example, back to DPC. I get referred through DPC all the time because I've helped multiple practices in DPC and they know how I work, and there's already a trust established because I've worked with multiple practices and they share my name, and I'm so appreciative. So it's the same thing in the menopause example. They will go and share the name with similar people, which is your target audience, and they will help you sell you, and you won't have to go do all of it yourself. Yes, I still believe in marketing yourself, and that will be a podcast for another day. But going back to your branding, your messaging, your niche, your imagery on your website, what is the personality that's going to exude through the writing on your pages? When people read the text, is it going to be boring? Is it going to be friendly? Is it going to be serious? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be empathetic? Is it going to be cheerful? Is it going to be bubbly? These are things that I literally think of every single time I write copy for a client or our team writes copy for a client. I think of the personality of the doctor or the clinician, and I think of, okay, who are we speaking to? What is this person like? How can we showcase this through the site? And sometimes, I will ask, what is the tone of the site that you want? I've had one of my favorite copies that we did was an investment tone, like as if you're investing, right, in stocks. So we were talking about investing in your health, which was really cool. We did another one recently where a client of mine specializes in addiction recovery, and they're also primary care. And we wrote content about not doing it alone and that recovery was possible. And do you feel stuck in unhealthy patterns? And so every time we write content, for me, it's actually really fun because we're writing content in such a way that I'm like, if I read this as someone that wanted to partake in this practice, would it speak to me? And sometimes you need to put yourself in the shoes of that person that's reading, not just say, hey, this is what we do, check mark, check mark, check mark. You need to stop and be like, would I want to buy into this? Or do I just want to sound impressive through my writing? Being impressive through your writing doesn't mean anything if you're not actually solving a problem for the person you're writing for. So when I read this as a potential patient, you want to speak to me in such a way that it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. Oh my gosh, this is speaking to me. This can help me. And so you really want to think about that in your messaging when you're creating your brand. Thank you so much for joining today. And I plan to put out more content. I'm still working on building, we're in the very beginning of building the Kli'nishen's Atelier's website, but definitely sign up. I do have a freebie at the bottom of the site called My Ideal Patient. It is geared more towards DPC, but there's still a lot of helpful content in there that can help you regardless if you're DPC or not. And if you're not already following us, you can follow us at the Kli'nishen Atelier on Instagram and Facebook. And I also have a free marketing group on Facebook called DPCs in Private Practice Marketing. You can go ahead and join that group as well. And I will also be open to any ideas that you have, any content if you post in the group, or sometimes I'll ask, what do you want to learn about? I always like to know, because at the end of the day, this group and this information really is to benefit you guys. It's not really to benefit me per se, though I learn through every one of you when I work with you all. But definitely, if you have anything that you want to learn or anything that you have questions about, or you'd like to be featured and you'd like me to interview you, I would be more than happy to connect and see what the topic could be about and how we could create content for others to hear and share your stories. So again, you can find me at theklinishenatelier.com.